to talk this.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
I'm your penny host, Madeline.
I'm your axe host, Emma.
Oh, nice. And thanks for tuning in to this week's show. It's our PAX East special edition this week. We're a week out from PAX. What a weekend. You might be thinking...
weekend. The only conference that ReadPop is putting on.
Apparently.
There's no only one. E3.
Did that officially get canceled, or was it just... Really? Wow.
Officially canceled as of this Thursday.
Man. I mean, the writing was on the wall, so... that must mean it's dead forever then.
Yeah. I feel like it being anything physical is definitely, like, this was the last straw.
Well, that probably brings us to, I wanted to start with some overall thoughts about PAX East 2023 before we talk a little more about the specific games we played. Which is, if you listen to last year's PAX episode, you probably heard us complain, I guess, complain would be the word, about or remark upon the lack of presence from any of the kind of big studios or really kind of tentpole games.
Yeah.
And that, I think, really kind of continued this year. Like a slightly lesser extent. I mean, Nintendo was there.
Technically.
But it still really felt to me like I enjoyed our PAX experience this year, and I think we had a better experience than last year. Not that last year was bad, but a better experience than last year. But I feel like that lack of the kind of AAA presence, or not even necessarily AAA, but the lack of that kind of prestige big booth presence for me is still really felt.
Yeah, I think it was actually worsened this year because there were some big like indie publishers that weren't there, which I didn't really process until we were done. But like Tiny Build or it had like a huge booth last year.
Yeah.
Team 17. It was who was doing ramen.
I can't remember if that was Team 17, but Team 17 did have a presence.
Okay, maybe that was also Tiny Build. Tiny Build just had like a huge one.
Yeah.
Last year, and they weren't there. And Devolver didn't have anything new, really. Because they had the Cult of the Lamb DLC was like their big... Like, it was Cult of the Lamb last year, and now they were showing the DLC this year. That was like their big tentpole one. They just didn't have anything, like, new.
Do you think that these kinds of... I mean, you're right to emphasize that it did feel like there was a lot of repeated stuff at this year's PAX in a way that I didn't feel when we went consecutively in 2019 and 2020.
Yeah.
Now, that may just be that we are savvier about it now than we were the first year into the second year.
But, I mean, 2020 had stuff that had, like, Animal Crossing and Final Fantasy VII Remake, which of course neither of those were repeats and were like very big notable games.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're definitely right, and I totally agree to say, yeah, in some ways the offerings on hand this year were even less interesting than last year. And I think very much my walking away from it feeling like I had a more satisfying experience was I was more prepared for what I was going into, right? And like how different it would feel from like 2020, where yeah, we had these like gigantic events basically happening. Yeah. But I do wonder. Well, E3 on the one hand, E3 on the other hand, E3. I do wonder if these big studios will ever come back. Like on one hand, E3 has felt totally fallen apart, and maybe these kinds of in-person conferences are just not where money wants to be spent by these kind of companies anymore. On the other hand, E3 has totally fallen apart, so does that funnel anything into PAX in the future?
It's worth noting that the scale of something like E3 and PAX are like on completely different levels. Worth pointing out. So on one hand, that means that if they wanted to come back, it's way less expensive to do something like PAX than it would be to be like, oh, we have to do like a big E3 showcase, on a stage or whatever. Or if you're PlayStation that one year, like 3 stages you funnel people between thematically. But on the other hand, it's like it's not as like marketing presence-y. It doesn't actually get you a lot to go to PAX. So I don't know.
But I guess I'm wondering if even that will change, right? With not that E3 has exactly been a center of gravity for the past few years, but with that, like, well and truly nailed in the coffin, I do wonder if that, this is just whatever, pure wondering. Like, I do wonder if that means that PAX will take on a different role in this ecosystem, or if it will just stay the same and this is what it will be from now on.
Well, I was really surprised that, like, you marked on this too. Like, we went to the Final Fantasy 16 panel. Yoshi P was there.
Yeah.
And Square Enix was not. They didn't have a booth. They had, like, the 14's new, like, fashion line little display up in the front hall, but they didn't have a booth there. Which, when we went before, they used to have, like, their demo booth and their huge merch booth. You'd think they'd at least do a merch one if Yoshi P was there, like, really push the 14 stuff,
What about the dog plush?
Yeah, sell those dog plushes. Like, I guess it's still a little early for a 16 demo to be public. Especially since Square has moved entirely to, like, every game gets a digital demo before it releases, like, on a set time frame. But
I guess so, and you'll understand this better than me, I think, but the game comes out in June, right?
I'm just comparing to, like, Remake's timeline. It was like a month before Remake when it was at PAX.
Right, but now it's like 2 months. Is it late June? I guess maybe it's 3 months. Yeah. Okay. Still feels like you could have like a 5-minute thing.
I think they could just be like, here's like the 70 games we released in the last 4 months of 2022. Have you tried them?
But see, here's the thing though. Like, yes, and that would have been better perhaps, but also, isn't that more or less, I mean, not with the tone of the Square Enix 73 games, but that's more or less what the Nintendo booth was. The Nintendo booth was, here's a bunch of games on the Switch, play them in this public setting after waiting in a long line.
Yeah, I mean, I was joking, but, like, the number is different there, to be fair. Also.
That is true.
They're like, here's Pokemon and, like, a Mario game at the Nintendo booth. Because they release games at a normal pipeline.
But that was a super weird use of the Nintendo booth. The Nintendo booth that also did not have any merch. Why is no one selling me merch?
They should take a photo with Mario. I like the Pokemon card booth was weird, but it sort of makes sense because you have a thriving tabletop section of PAX. So I sort of get that. But yeah, the game booth, I don't know why people were like, yeah, I want to play Mario. Yeah,
it was a little weird. And I, speaking of games that come out in a month, of course it's not Nintendo style. It would not have been Nintendo style to do this, but like something more with Tears of the Kingdom. Like, even if you're not going to do a demo, like, okay, you're not going to do a demo. I get it. You're Nintendo. You barely want to show us gameplay footage. Like, I understand.
They did just do a gameplay showcase this week.
I know they did, but like 10 minutes, right? Like, which I understand that, like, obviously they aren't trying to throw a bunch of this out there in advance. That doesn't seem to be what they're doing. Nor do they have to. This game will sell 10 million billion copies.
Yep.
But it was interesting to me that it's like, like the only thing you have is that like Link thing at the front. Like, you built that whole gigantic Animal Crossing booth before you even knew that it would keep all of us alive for months.
Yeah.
So, like, this game, is going to make more money than God. more money than Ganondorf.
Well,
whatever.
I mean, then why did they have to show it?
Well, they should have built me like a climbing gym. Or like a glider thing. I'm saying, I don't know. I wish there'd been an experience, even if they weren't going to let me play the game.
Yeah, you know what? They should have had a glider that you could pose on, like that T-Rex.
Yeah.
You're right. That would have been a good photo opportunity. Minimal effort. I'm going to say rock climbing wall, probably a bad idea.
Look, you're not wrong, but I don't work at Nintendo. Somebody could figure that out.
Maybe they proposed it. Maybe they're like, we're going to do a rock climbing wall, and PAX was like, maybe not. Nintendo.
But I feel the same way about Final Fantasy 16. Like, again, I guess if your demo is not ready, okay. Although I don't believe that you couldn't have some kind of very small... I mean, he was playing the game.
They had a press demo, so, like, he was talking about it, right? They showed their small, dark, cramped... Maybe that's why. Maybe they're like, we don't want to hear any more comments about how it's dark, actually.
Like,
we're pulling the demo.
I don't think that would have, like, everyone would have just been like, oh, cool, Final Fantasy. Like, I can't imagine. But yeah, it was just interesting with so many huge games coming out in the next, like, not even 6 months, like 3 months. The complete lack of the, like, very saturated gaming season to come was notable and noticeable.
Yeah.
And I do want to say, though, that, like, I was glad that we went to the Yoshi P Final Fantasy 16 panel, because it did feel like the closest thing to, like, an event.
Yeah.
So even though we weren't like, yes, we're going to line up for this way in advance, like with the 14 panel and the craziness that happened getting in with that, I did feel like, okay, I'm glad I went to something in the main auditorium and, like, saw the flashy big game, because it did sort of make it feel a little bit more like there was an event on Saturday that held the day together.
Yeah, we got a big old Clive bag.
Carrying it around everywhere now. Replaced my backpack.
I don't think it would work very well, honestly.
Serious question for conference merch, free merch orderers. Why? Why is the backpack thing, like, the thing?
Yeah, so, if we're going to the 16 panel, you got a free bag. And it's a very big, like, shopping bag material bag. If you have any reusable shopping bags, it feels like that. Big art on both sides, with the key art for Final Fantasy 15, sure. Backpack straps. And really thin bottom. I just want to know what the like, I get that it's like billboard for walking around a conference, but what is the intended purpose of such a bag? What do you put in that?
I know, you think about it, right? You probably couldn't, like, you could put a water bottle in it, but it would be, like, uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Right?
Because, well, it's like, it's too tall for it, too. It's both too thin and too tall for a water bottle. And, like, normal papers, it is also too tall to put in, like, normal-sized papers or a computer.
Yeah, if you're, like, collecting buttons and business cards and stuff at vendors, it's not going to be good for that. It's not going to be good for a plush.
It's basically just like a poster bag, essentially. Yeah. But, like, that is such a small functional use. Why did they invent these?
It's baffling to me. It does sort of feel like if you're going to give me something with the art this tacky to begin with, it's lovely concept art, lovely key art, but it's, like, real tacky on a big billboard poster size bag, right? Like, at least give it to me on a tote bag or something where, like, I still use, you know, those little, we got those, like, little Animal Crossing bags for playing that demo. I use that from time to time because in fact, I used it a lot in the beginning of the pandemic, actually, but I still use it from time to time because it crumples up super small if I'm, like, going to the store, or if I'm going to the farmer's market after, like, going on a run, or if I'm going to the store after going somewhere else, I can just, like, shove it in my purse, or, like, shove it in my pocket, shove it in my hand, and then it becomes a bag when I need it. That was super, super good. And even though it's sort of like a tacky little Animal Crossing bag, right, I still use it because it's super usable. And not that Animal Crossing needs my free advertising or anything like that, but why?
I mean, I get that this has to be super cheap, right? Because there could be 4,000 people going into the theater. Apparently seats 4,000, and everybody has to get one. If it was normal shopping bag size, I would probably use it.
Yeah.
If it was like normal grocery bag size, that would be really nice. And I think that would be even cheaper, honestly. So that's my suggestion for the future. Just a normal grocery bag size.
So Square Enix, bring merch and better bags next time. So overall, let's like dive into the games we played a little bit. But overall, I think, like we said, I think we had a much better idea of how to approach. I feel like we've refined our PAX approach.
Yeah.
And I recommend to everyone, the 2-day strategy, especially if PAX is going to continue not having like these big tentpole games. Like maybe it would be worth, I felt like 3 days in 2020 made sense, right? I don't really remember the details. I mostly remember playing Animal Crossing and Final Fantasy, and it was like tiring. But you know, if you have a day where it's like, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna wait in line to play Animal Crossing, right? Then okay, maybe that 3rd day makes sense. But without that, it is sort of a lot of, you know, like it starts to, you run out of things to do. You run out of games that are really drawing your attention, and you really have to commit. You know, if we were to add on Friday, I feel like we would have had to committed to being like, well, we're just going to wait in every line for the games that we are even moderately interested in, which just to me,
or go to a lot more panels.
Or that's true. But the panels were hit or miss. That's always the problem.
Madelyn loves Cult of the Lamb. Obviously.
But, like, not in a weird way. Like, sorry, no offense to
No, I was just disclaimering it. Like, you like the game, right? So this isn't like Madelyn hates the game and wants it to fail after it's been out for, like, a year and been successful, but whatever. But yeah, we went to the Call of the Lamb panel. It sucked. It was bad.
It was super
I want to hear you talk about
weird.
your game if I'm going to a panel. I don't want to do, like, a weird in-person Discord hangout with you.
It was just weird, and like, whatever. Maybe they were all just super, super jet lagged, right? Like, all coming from Australia, exhausted, delusional.
I mean, it's not like you couldn't have some of this.
No, yeah.
A little warm-up exercise. Talk about your game a little bit. A little cool-down exercise. That's fine. Whatever. But I feel you gotta, like, I went there because I was like, I'm curious, what was your thought process upon making Cult of the Lamb, you know?
Yeah.
What sort of funny stories from development were there? You could, you know, there's lots of stuff you could do.
That's what I was expecting. I was expecting, like, sort of silly, like, I don't know, like, silly development stories. Like I said to you beforehand, I was like, do you think this will be too memey? But I thought based on the description, it sounded like they were going to talk about it a little bit, and they did not seem to have a plan to talk about anything about the game other than creating a ranking of, like, 40 different follower forms.
Yeah.
Of which none of them had, like, interesting reasons to put them anywhere, either. No. Like, maybe I could imagine there being, like, YouTubers who could be outrageous enough to make doing a tier list of 40 follower forms interesting.
Yeah.
But these people, while they seemed like lovely people, did not come prepared enough to do that.
No. The other panel we saw was a historical games with historians. That one I thought was pretty much like the ideal PAX panel. It's not like terribly deep, but you've got people who are clearly passionate about the subject. They've prepared a presentation. It's a relatively interesting topic, so even if you're skimming just the surface level, it's fun to listen to. It provides a nice break in the middle of the day. That's my ideal PAX panel, because they're relatively short. You know, you can't really like do a GDC talk during a PAX panel, I don't think. So
no, I enjoyed that one too, and it definitely it had some kernels that I really enjoyed, and then it had some portions that was like, oh, you don't have to spend this much time on this. Like, I get it.
yeah.
Which is, to be honest, is definitely like top 20% of PAX panels. If there are some kernels of like, oh, this is an actually interesting thing that you're talking about, then that's up there in the panels that we've gone to.
Yeah.
So that one was good, and yeah, like I just feel like if these panels are like prepared, they're better.
Yes.
But I
shocking.
found
Shocking.
Yeah. I found the parts of that one where they talked about, well, we talked about this afterwards a little bit, how sort of all historical games have to be mapped onto World War II thematically.
Yeah.
Like, that was like I hadn't really thought about it exactly like that. And that's a really interesting thing to talk about here. And made me think about things differently. And I would have loved for them to feel like they could get into the more, like, specific things like that and spend a little less time being like, well, it's just like, I get it. Like, you fact check games and you shouldn't drive yourself crazy doing that. You can talk about that for 2 minutes and then we can go to the stuff I wouldn't think of. But I get it. I'm too smart. I understand. I'm way ahead of the game. Anyway, let's talk about games. Games we played. Game-a-roonies. Game demos.
We played a lot on Thursday.
Yeah.
We were good. We hopped on things.
Well, which is the intention, right? If you out there are planning the ideal PAX, let me recommend Thursday, play as many demos as you possibly can.
Yep.
It's probably not even the day, like, if there's gonna be a game that's, like, huge, grab it on Thursday. So, like, we played Final Fantasy VII Remake on Thursday in 2020, and that was as easy as I walked up to the booth and he gave me a little time, and that was it.
Yeah, little tickets.
And I guarantee that would not have happened any other day at PAX. But given that those games are probably not around, we'll see. If they're not back next year, they'll never be back, right? Yeah. But maybe they'll be back next year. It's not a day where I would say it's worth waiting in a mid-tier game line.
No.
I don't mean mid-tier in terms of quality. I mean mid-tier in terms of how many people are trying to play it.
It's definitely a day where you should get the lay of the land, and if you see anything that has long lines on Thursday that's sort of like you're interested in it, you should just remember it and like go through those games on the other day that you go to PAX.
Yeah. So yeah, we played, that's the way to go. Play tons of demos on Thursday, and then on Saturday or Friday. If you wanted to do two days in a row, you could do that too, but we wanted a day off in the middle. But come in Friday or Saturday ready to hit the panels you're excited about, because they usually have sort of like the big ones on those days, I feel like. And then also wait in the lines of those games that you identified, because everything has a line on Saturday. And You're going to feel dumb waiting in a 5-person line for one of those little games that you could walk pretty much right up to on Thursday.
Yeah.
Like, that happened to us a lot on Saturdays. Like, we sort of started waiting in line for something because we're like, yes, this is our line day. We're not afraid to wait in lines. And then I'd be standing in the line and I'm like, I don't want to wait half an hour to play this. Like, it's not worth that. So I'm not very good at waiting in lines. That's the takeaway.
We got to get those. I saw like 5 people with like little collapsible stools. We got to get those.
Yeah, I know.
We got to invest in those.
Next time.
Smart.
Well, Emma, on Thursday, in particular, I guess, but any day, what games stood out to you as your PAX highlights?
On Thursday, I liked Slay the Princess, which was at the PAX Rising booth, right?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. We played that one more towards the morning, I think. It's like a little, I guess it's sort of like a choose your own adventure game, but like with like a time loopy aspect, and the narrator and the hero you're controlling are sort of arguing while you go. So you're like a third party of some sort that's telling the hero what to do. And you're supposed to go kill the princess. And the narrator definitely seems trustworthy and like they know what they're doing, so you should clearly just go and do that.
That's what Emma did. She trusted the narrator.
I just went through like one thing and then enough into the next one to realize there was like time loopy shenanigans going on. But yeah, the first one I was just like, yeah, I think the narrator's right. I think we gotta slay this princess. That's what it says. That's the name of the game. That's what you gotta do. But I enjoyed it. It was fully voice acted, which I don't know if you could hear it because I think I had headphones on. But
I could hear the guy next to you who did not trust the narrator.
What a fool.
Yeah.
Personally. And then I liked Mineko's Night Market, which is something that I've had sort of burning on the back of my 300 games Steam wish list or whatever for a while now. Seems to be your Mineko. You've moved to this weird little town. There's something weird going on. Gotta rescue some cats. Pick some flowers. Craft some stuff to sell. Become friends with the townspeople. Seemingly get just pushed around by your friend Bobo. Tells you to do things and then doesn't help, but you do them.
Silly Bobo.
Silly Bobo. But that seemed fun. Little puzzle game. I figured out
for a moment.
Any puzzle game, doesn't matter which one, how well telegraphed it is, how this is like natural it is, I will get stuck on something stupid.
That's just how puzzle games work.
That's just
Everyone's
how puzzle
got to
games
get
work.
stuck on something stupid at some point.
Yeah. I think those are my 2 Thursday games where I was like, yeah, that's cool.
Let's see. Did I have any others to add to on Thursday that were super cool? I liked the art in Dordogne was really lovely.
Yeah. I also got stuck in that a few times. Where is it? Where you go?
What did you get stuck on?
I went to, you're supposed to go upstairs and like unpack your stuff, right? And I went into the room and talked to like my grandma, and my grandma was like, oh, why don't you get unpacked first? And for some reason I interpreted that as like, don't bother me in my room, go to your room and unpack. And then I wandered around the house for another 5 minutes being like, where's my room? Until I realized the suitcase was in fact next to the grandma.
Okay, I see that. Anyway, in Dordogne, I can't tell if the whole game is going to be played this way, but you start off as a young woman who seems to have like forgotten a bunch of your past, right?
I didn't see the beginning. I loaded.
Well, there's an opening where you start off as a young woman and like something has been going on like with this house and your grandma, but like you'd forgotten about it until just now or something, and the memories start coming back.
Well, you are like a little baby.
Anyway,
however
you're
old
there.
she's
It's like
a
beautifully drawn like adventure game kind of game. The girls game at the focus booth.
Yes, it was the girls game at the focus booth.
The game for girls.
We were far back in the line, and he was asking everybody what they wanted to play, the guy at the booth, and we were like, they're done yet. And he's like, oh, it's open. Yeah. That's the one the girls play. Those gamer chairs, though, comfy.
Yeah, shout out to the gamer chairs.
Love playing my girly game in a gamer chair with a bright red Alienware computer pulsing next to me.
Brought to you by Alienware.
As true girl gamers do.
There's always a few of these booths at PAX that have like real like man gamer energy. I just mean, and what I mean by that is like they have a ton of like computers, right? And
it wasn't. I think of those as like only keyboard controls.
Yeah.
And they did have controllers of this
You're
one.
right.
So it was not fully like man booth.
But there's every year, I feel like there's just a couple every year of these like man booths where it's like, oh look, you look at it and it's like, it's all men playing this sort of like sometimes generic looking manly game.
Yes.
And I don't mean that like that the game is bad or anything. It's just that the marketing picture of it is
yes,
generic man game.
Yes.
And I'm intimidated by those booths because I am bad at mouse and keyboard, and I feel like I will reinforce negative stereotypes by being bad at mouse and keyboard in the manly gamer booths.
Unfortunately, we're also bad at Xbox controllers, so...
Oh my god, the ubiquitous Xbox controllers. What I would give for a mod that just replaces it with the PlayStation buttons. Like, they don't have to change the controller or anything. Yeah. They just have to do X, circle, square, triangle, and R1, L1. Like, oh my god. I can get the buttons eventually. The triggers, I humiliated myself in front of people at more than one booth because I don't know. I don't understand what a bumper... I understand what a bumper is. I'm sorry, saying it out loud, I know what a bumper is, but it doesn't... I have to think about it for a minute to understand bumper versus trigger.
Yeah.
And it's hard for me.
Yeah.
To be fair, I don't know that I could do it on a Switch controller either. I don't know which one is which on the Switch controller either.
I don't even know what are they even called? Are they also LTLB on?
No, it's L and R, and then I think it's like XL and XR.
Oh, right. Like yeah, that's right. Yeah.
At least on the Switch. On the Switch, I'm confident in the buttons.
Yes. Yeah.
But I'm not super confident in the triggers, and on Xbox, I'm confident in nothing. So you'd better hope that your button is the button that I would assign for that action. But yeah, bumpers, man. Who would have thought?
Who would have thought?
Anyway, so I enjoyed Dordogne. It's like it's a game that I enjoy as a demo, and then like would probably not. I don't know. Adventure games are not always like my first pick. So
depends how long it was, I think.
That's true. I agree with that. That's true.
I also liked Third Eye Open.
I was gonna ask you about that one because I didn't get to see that one at all.
What's the publisher booth there?
I don't know.
It's the Coffee Talk guy, the publisher.
I'll look it up.
I'm not sure. Yeah, is also like a sort of adventure game with like horror elements. It actually had like a crafted demo. Like at the beginning, it gives you a little like, here's what's happening, sort of, and we're gonna go into it. And then it even skips ahead a little bit so that you get a taste of like, oh, you're talking with your friends, and then you're in like sort of a spooky, ghosty encounter. It's crafted demos. Nice, they're good. But I also then know when to stop, which I often have a problem with at demos.
Yeah, I feel a lot of anxiety about that with demos at PAX.
Yeah. Even if you don't have a crafted one, if you can set like a timer, that would be really helpful for me, because then I know when you would like me to move on, basically.
Serenity Forge or Chorus Worldwide?
I think Serenity Forge.
That's what I was thinking.
It also gives you like a little disclaimer at the beginning that they've written it in sort of like broken Mandarin and English, so they sort of combine it and sometimes don't have like super proper grammar, so it's like they've written it in sort of like a Mandarin accent, I guess, sort of. It's an interesting read. It has like little footnotes too when they're using like some sort of Mandarin expression that explains like what is meant by it. So it's definitely like a time and placey sort of game, as well as being a spooky one. It's the characters are like little paper cutouts, sort of like little paper dolls, and they shift angles based on what direction you're going. I think I fought with the camera a little bit during the spooky parts. I wished it was either like the camera would turn automatically or I could turn the camera instead of like both at the same time. But otherwise, I thought it was interesting. It was spooky. You get chased at the end.
What more can you ask for than that?
What more can you ask for than that? She seems to be like, your main character's only met like benevolent ghosts up to this point. And so she seems to be having a little crisis at the end of the demo of having met like malevolent spirits. So seems like it could be interesting.
Well, Emma alludes to something here in that description that we encountered quite a bit especially in our Thursday PAX experience, I think.
Yeah.
Which is, like, uncrafted demos. Which I think kind of took one of two forms. One was games that it would be more or less impossible to have an effective 15-minute demo for. So that was stuff like, I think the one that I'll say it was the game that I was most interested in of these, and just sort of felt like, man, the demo environment is not great for this, was Potion Tycoon, which seemed like very much the kind of like management sim kind of game that I sometimes get very into. But because in order to play that game, you have to learn enough of the systems to be a potion tycoon, it's really hard to get a vibe from doing that for 15 minutes. Especially when you're like hyper aware, as I always am, that you are like potentially blocking someone else from trying the game for the amount of time that you're playing. So I do think for games like that, you're just sort of stuck. Like, there's just no way, unless you're gonna really unless you're a game that people are like really excited to play and they're gonna get a specific amount of time. Like, I don't know how much of crafting or whatever you're doing in Story of Seasons, right? But like, that's the kind of thing where it's like, okay, I could imagine a bad demo of that game spending way too long tutorializing, but I also know that people were excited enough to play that game that they could create like a 20-minute demo and, you know, probably create a crafted experience there. Haha, a crafted crafting experience. But if you're not in the position to command that amount of time and those kinds of lines and that amount of like specific development, something like Potion Tycoon or like the several other games like that we tried out over the course of the weekend, where there's just a bit of learning before you have to really dive in. Yeah. It's tough.
Yeah, I think just management games in general are tough to, well, especially tough to demo on a show floor.
Yeah.
Basically.
And then on the flip side of things, there were games that were just like, oh man, you should have had somebody there telling me to like start from a save file or something, right? Like the good example of this was we played a demo for a game called The Last Worker, which was about like a, you know, a sort of dystopian Amazon warehouse kind of thing where everyone else has died, maybe? I don't know. It seemed like the robots might have killed them. In a really stylish sort of opening cinematic thing. Yeah. But you're the last worker. And the opening cinematic was stylish, and I was glad to have watched it, because I think otherwise I would have come away from that game being like, this was boring. Yeah. But then you just start from the beginning of the game, where the game like teaches you how to walk. Yeah. Which I recognize is an essential element of any game, but is a rough demo. Yeah.
Yeah, I felt like you would have had to play it for like a while more to get a sense of what actual most of the gameplay is like.
Yeah. I wish they could have thrown me into something just with like, and put the controls next to me. Yeah. Basically. Because I was like, oh, this is interesting, and like the voice acting is fun, and like the story seems like an intriguing setup. But, like, what actually is the game here? I don't know. You're teaching me to walk down a corridor. Yeah. So it shows how difficult this is. Because you might just think, oh, starting from the beginning, perfect demo. But not necessarily. No. In the mid-tier from Thursday, for me, Cuddly Carnage is probably not a game that I would seek out, but had like fun flow, at least, of you're like
big Borderlands energy.
Yeah, you know, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah, like you're a cat on a skateboard, like killing unicorns. And yeah, it's definitely got that like Borderlands crude humor energy. Yeah. Where I play that and I'm like, I'm not sure if this is exactly my thing.
You are a cat on a hoverboard, though, which does, I think, increase its appeal a little bit for me.
It did,
but
feel
the unicorns
sick.
Bring it back down again for me, to be honest. Yeah. So
it did feel pretty sick grooving around on the hoverboard. It's the kind of game that it's like, oh, I'd like to see more about what the actual game is like from moment to moment, because it was good feeling kind of grooving around, killing the unicorns in the little arena they set up. But I kind of wonder, you know, what does it look like when you have a little bit more freedom of movement? And I enjoyed Veneris Tactics for what it was. Little tactics game. Mm-hmm. Early levels felt like they took forever. but that's probably just my anxiety about taking up a booth at PAX.
I got the sense that it was probably based on history, but I did not catch what it was.
Should have had the historians in there.
Yeah.
And then Trinity Trigger looked like competent for what it was.
Oh, yeah. Furyu made Caligula Effect 2, which I talked about at the beginning of like last year. They sort of saunter back and forth between making really awful games and making like charmingly janky games. And Trinity Trigger definitely seems like it leans on the charmingly janky aspect. Also 3-player co-op, so that's a plus.
Another entry into that strange little canon.
Yeah.
And then finally, I can't move away from Thursday without talking about like my most disappointing game of the weekend, which was Toxic Crusaders. Which looked like it was going to be my jam. Like, local co-op beat 'em up. Like, especially after just getting, like, a new fix of this, playing River City Girls, and us playing that whole game in, like, a day and a half. Here I was like, yes, here we go. Give me some Scott Pilgrim energy. Like, let's do this. And it was not great.
No.
It's really tough to have a game that they were, like, hyping up so much there that the combat really was, like, 90% one button.
Yeah. Yeah, I was really confused by I was wondering, like, do you unlock more stuff later? If you do, I feel like your demo should have that stuff so that you can see it. But my main issue is I spent most of the time, like, I, like, knocked an enemy off screen, and then I blocked their way back in and just punched them off screen.
Yeah.
Was my big strat, which isn't super exciting.
So I don't know when that game is slated to come out. But hopefully there's more that is going into it. Because, that was it was disappointing. Like, it was fine. Like, I didn't have, like, a bad time playing it, but I was, like, ready to be done when I stopped.
Yeah.
So then on Saturday, we didn't play as many games.
No.
But we did play Demon School.
We did, yeah. Another one, like Minako's Night Market, that has been sitting along on my 300 game long Steam wish list. From I Yizbrid. I have no idea how to pronounce that publisher's name.
Starts with a Y. Yellow logo.
Yizbrid games. Also like a tactics game. They have you they had just line up for it. It's like a timed thing. You could pick either you could try fighting a boss, or you could get one that has like smaller battles plus some like story character interaction, plus seeing like what moving around the overworld is like. It was fun. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, I did too. And I feel like that was a good example of a game that like taught you just enough.
Yeah, they gave you like a little pamphlet so that you could read a little bit more if you wanted to, but I just sort of winged it. And sort of got a vibe after like the first battle of like, oh, this is sort of how it works. Okay, I got it.
Well, the nice thing about it was I got the vibe that it's like, oh, okay, I'm playing an early game battle right now, so like it's okay that I'm just sort of like flailing around and I'm not 100% grasping the system that I'm using. I'm sort of grasping it, but I'm not 100% understanding like what I'm doing here. But I got a sense of like, oh, this is a fun system that I would get the hang of and would be able to like manipulate in more complex ways as I played more, as opposed to many of these other games where they're like, I must teach you everything.
Yeah.
So it was clear that, I mean, obviously it was clear because they had like 2 different demo experiences available for you, right? So it was clear that like some crafting had gone into that experience of like, how are we going to give players a feel for this game without like monologuing at them all the controls for half of the demo time?
Yeah. That is the benefit, I will say, of being a game that's one of the focuses of a dedicated publisher, right?
Yeah.
Is that you can, like Usbit especially only publishes a couple of games, like a game a year or something like that. So, I'm sure like we didn't play any of the ones that Devolver thing because we had seen Terra Nil before. I don't really want to try the Call of the Land DLC, and like there was another one there, but whatever. But those were probably pretty good demos, right? Because Devolver can help you make them. And if you're just there by yourself, I can see why it might be harder to set aside time to actually make that demo.
Oh, I am so sympathetic to how hard it is. Like, I completely understand that it's not like, oh, it's so easy for me to create a crafted demo. Like, of course. But it does make a difference.
Demon School did also set it up on classic school desks and chairs, which were also very comfy.
Shockingly so.
And nostalgic. The little blue chairs with the little metal bits, you know?
Yeah. Also on
almost
Saturday,
as comfy
again,
as the gamer chair.
Also on Saturday, again, we did not play, but that we watched a bit of and had originally wanted to play before I was unwilling to push my way in line in front of a child.
We watched a good chunk of it, so it basically counts.
Yeah. Was Shumi Come Home, featuring the cutest mascot of PAX East. Little Shumi, the little mushroom person.
Yep.
Which looked cute, right? And definitely seemed to have... I feel like people who come to PAX with, like, very cute mascot games should know what they're getting themselves into. Because it did seem like the people at that booth... Not that it was, like, a wild line or anything, but it didn't seem like they were prepared for there to be 7 or 8 people waiting around.
They were upping up production of their little mushroom paper hats, though.
They were.
So.
They were scaling up. They were getting ready for it, but it definitely seemed like the kind of thing where they were like, "Oh, people are interested in this."
Yeah.
Which is cool. It's always cool to like see that in a way when you can see like, "Oh, this wasn't 100% expected."
Yeah.
But yeah, in this one you play as little Shumi the mushroom. You got your little Zelda glider leaf, and you're running around. It's not really a Zelda-like though, as far as I can tell. Definitely looked more of like an adventure game sort of thing.
It reminded me of a short hike. I said. A more 3D short hike.
Which, if that's the case, I'm interested.
Yeah.
So, keep an eye on that one. And then we played a couple other games that day. We played Moonlight Pulse, which was like your little mole doing platforming things.
Yeah.
That was pretty good, except I was bad at jumping.
Yeah.
And then we played Go Town, which was like a very cutesy little city manager builder thing.
Yeah.
Which did an okay job tutorializing, but also made me feel like, I wish I could do more.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like it did a better job in keeping me contained to something and starting to give me ideas, but not necessarily a great job of when does this game get fun.
Yeah. A lot of management games. And a lot of management games or like city building stuff that made me a little vaguely uncomfortable if I thought about it for too long.
Yeah, some colonial stuff floating around.
Yeah.
And just resource stripping stuff floating around for sure.
I mean, you know, management stuff and city building stuff is sort of inherently like that, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they're bad, but there's one where they're like, we're gonna go colonize the moon.
Yeah.
We're gonna bulldoze these buildings that we found. I don't know, it just made me a little bit like, I don't know about this one.
And it's like, on one hand, like, okay, maybe if we pivoted all of our colonial impulses to city builders, that would be better.
Yeah.
Right? But on the other hand, yeah, it does sort of feel like, oof, the more you're hitting home for me that I'm, like, stripping resources to colonize, like, let's keep it a little vaguer than that.
Yeah. I
need a couple do all these things. Let's just not use this like language paradigm.
I need another couple layers of abstraction here, please, so that I can feel comfortable with it.
Put a few of the freaky unicorns around from Deadly Carnage. That'll help.
We could take over their land. That's fine. I think
that'd be fun.
Better
then it'd be
them.
Like, yes, they deserve to be colonized. That's what Emma is saying. I didn't say that. That's what Emma was saying.
No. Oh my.
Well, overall impressions of PAX this year to close out?
I feel like I came away with less games where I was like, oh yeah, I really liked this.
Yeah.
But we played a lot of okay stuff at the same time.
Yeah, I agree with that. I feel like there wasn't as much. I mean, I still haven't played Teenage Exocolonist, but I really liked that one last year. And I feel like there were others that we played last year that stuck out to me. But I feel like we're forever chasing that PAX 2020 where, you know, just that little bit of fear in the air.
Yeah. The sense of danger.
And I always forget that, like, Fall Guys was at that one too. I was like, oh yeah, like a lot of good and flashy stuff there that I feel like we are forever chasing. Yeah. But a satisfying and fun PAX. It's always fun to play a bunch of different games all the time. I didn't break any of them this year, so my streak ends. Didn't get any bonus merch for breaking anything this year. But you know, go to PAX.
There's always next time. Alan will go on a rampage of carnage next year.
I will. I'm just gonna like tip everything over. I'm just gonna. There'll be like a giant Torgal or whatever, and I'll push him over. I'll punch Mario.
Oh yeah, the lamb himself.
Oh, the
lost on the show floor.
It was a highlight. The fact that he wasn't on they weren't all like dressed in that costume on the panel is when I should have known that it was going to be bad.
If they had all been dressed in the big mascot costume, I think I would have stuck around to see them try to make a tier list.
Yeah, I agree. Or if they had all, like the one guy who was like, I also recorded the voices for the followers and like did it. I was like, if he did that voice the whole time, I'd be in for it.
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh.
Well, folks, any of you go to PAX? Did you spot us at PAX? You didn't spot us at PAX. But do you think that E3's death will mean anything for PAX? Will the big studios ever return? Do you wish that Yoshi P had just absolutely annihilated the dog on the stream as he intended to, instead of pivoting to petting it as needed? If you have thoughts on any of this or what game demos should be like, hit us up on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Talk This Podcast. You can also visit our website, www.talkthispodcast.com, where you can check out the show, read all the games in the hat, and read our blog featuring long-running series Click with Boyfriend and Split Screen. Why do I say www in front of our website?
It's fun.
It is fun to say, and it's because I have to get into a flow with the end thing, or the words don't come out. So I'm testing interrupting myself here to see if I can one day cut the www, and let's see if I even remember what comes next. I do. It's the most important thing. You should subscribe to the show. We are on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, Pandora Podcasts, online and on the app, Overcast, Pocket Casts, wherever you find podcasts, wherever you found the podcast today. Subscribe to Talk This so you never miss an episode. Next week, it's Side Quest 7 Weeks in Gaming Time, so we won't talk about the PAX games. You can listen to those this week, but we will talk about the other games that we've been playing featuring Wile E. Coyote.
The sprung disease. Instead of brain, there is Leon being hit by a shovel.
You'll have to tune in next week for all the details about sprung disease. But that's it for the show. Thanks for listening, listeners. And this week, I hope that you start in the middle of the action with some explanation of what you're doing, but not too much.